Today's lesson on temperature is right here. Most of what we do is centered around temperature measured in Celsius in Canada. Does anybody watch, I know we're in a different generation now, does anybody watch television? I'm not talking about Netflix. I'm talking about like channels on TV. And specifically, I'm asking about American channels. Like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. Those channels have newscasts. And those channels come out of different cities. And at least I remember several years ago when I was a kid, watching like the Detroit channels. And it would come and they would talk about the weather. When they talked about the weather, and when you still hear about weather in the States, they don't use Celsius. So they were saying it's 20, like if for example, if it was 20 degrees here and it was 20 degrees there, it's two very 20 degrees. 20 degrees here is room temperature. 20 degrees, actually 21 degrees, but 20 degrees is room temperature. 20 degrees Fahrenheit in the States is freezing. It's below zero. It might be, we'll have to find out. It might be very similar with the temperature is out today. Not quite, but very similar to it. So there's a big difference between temperature in Celsius and temperature in Fahrenheit. Funny story about that. Does anybody in here know, have they had a class with Mr. Johnston, the phys ed teacher? Okay. He's one of my very, very best friends. I drive to work with him. He's a great guy. Well, he got a smoker. And he wanted to smoke ribs. And I'm not a pro by any means, but I've been doing it for a few years. And he asked me, how do I do it? I said, well, your temperature on your smoker has to be between 200 to 250 Fahrenheit. Okay? Well, Mr. Johnson made a mistake. He programmed the smoker so the temperature would be between 2 to 250 Celsius, which is about double the temperature. And if you cook something at double the temperature, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to burn! And it burned. And his ribs were almost indistinguishable. They did not have ribs that night. They had something else.
They were very flaky.
They were like charcoal. But that's why it's important to understand the difference between Fahrenheit and Celsius. Okay? Now, again, most applications in Canada, we're going to use Celsius. There might be a few where we use Fahrenheit, but very few. Okay? We are used to temperature in Celsius, and that's perfectly fine. But we have to know how to figure out what the equivalent temperature would be in Fahrenheit if we know it in Celsius, and vice versa. And that's what we're doing here today. All right? So the first thing is to change from, okay, the formula's right. Yeah, it is actually. The only thing that needs to be happening here is there's a small error. This and this need to be switched. So this is Fahrenheit, and this is Celsius. But the formulas are good. Okay? So the formula to switch from Celsius to Fahrenheit is F equals 9 over 5 times C plus 32. In other words, if you know the temperature in Celsius, multiply it by 9 over 5, which is 1.8, and then add 32. Okay? And if you want to find the temperature in Celsius, and you know the temperature in Fahrenheit, then you just take that temperature in Fahrenheit, and you subtract 32 first. So you subtract 32, and then you don't multiply it by 9 over 5. You multiply it by 5 over 9, which is the reciprocal of that. How do you multiply something by 5 over 9, you might ask? Well, and I guarantee you're going to ask this, so just please pay attention. So maybe you may not have to ask that later. You multiply by 5 first, the top number. And then you divide it by 9. So you multiply it by the top number, and then divide it by the bottom number, okay? And that's how you multiply by 5 over 9, okay? So for the top, where it's 9 over 5, it'd be the exact same. You'd multiply by the top number, which is 9, and then you would divide by the bottom number, which is 5. Okay, so let's do a couple examples. Here we go. The temperature to set the oven for a recipe is 425. Now there's a typo again. I'm so sorry about that. It's correct on mine, but it needs to be corrected on yours. So on yours, just take this and change it to a Fahrenheit, please. It's Celsius. Please change it to Fahrenheit. And please change this word to Celsius. And we're going to do the same thing for the next one, but we'll worry about that when we get there. So the temperature to set the oven for a recipe is 425 Fahrenheit. What is the temperature in Celsius? So the formula for this is C equals 5 over 9 bracket F minus 32. Okay? So we're going to definitely need a calculator of some kind. It could be your phone. 5 over 9 times 425 minus 32. If you take 425 and you subtract 32, you get 393. And we're going to multiply that by 5 over 9. So again, we're going to take 393 and we're going to multiply by 5 and then divide it by 9. And when we do that, what do we get on our calculators? We get 218.3. 218.3 degrees Celsius. That's the equivalent temperature in Celsius. It's not exact, but the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit, they're about one at this point. It's about half of what the other one. So we can understand why Mr. Johnston burnt his ribs, because he cooked them at about twice the temperature he should have. Okay. Next example. Again, small correction, please. So you're gonna switch this to a degree Celsius, please and thank you, and you're gonna change this to Fahrenheit. I hope you had a moment to make those changes. Now we're gonna go from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit is equal to 9 over 5C plus 32. So now, numbers can be confusing at times. Negative numbers can also be confusing. We have a negative number in here, so we have to be aware of that. It's 9 over 5 times negative 15 plus 32. Now remember what I said to do with the fraction, and I'll say it again because I know it's kind of tricky. What we're going to do is we're going to take that negative 15, and how do you make negative 15? That's a good question. If you were wondering that, you type in 15, and then if you're using one of my calculators, and you don't have to, you can certainly do this on the phone too, there's a plus minus button above the 7. So if you do press the plus minus button, then you got negative 15. Now we're going to take that, and we're going to multiply it by 9, and then divide it by 5. And when we do that, what do we get?
Negative 27.
Negative 27. Fantastic work. We get negative 27, and then we have that plus 32 at the end. Now, negative 27 plus 32, what do we get? 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And there's the answer. So minus 15 degrees Celsius is equivalent to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay?